양지 전부도 유미종 용은 모는 전부는 가자다 다그러 다른 건 전도 실문 또만 제잔라기 숑잘
To liberate sentient beings, please generate the supreme bodhicitta before we start today's teaching.
마판바 자양 대비셔서 비체 차도담be 주지 남정도 토네 바바당 직바당 콘도 차바테나 상지지 시스 저럽 소놈 곰브르시바 치호다메 바케나 주지 남정도 타원도 년담 조감 전담 이겐 저금 이겐 전직감 라원라메도 라원라메도 당 득부당 부당 창화 당 식바당 시마당 구당 득당 ям선당 히 와든당 저머지 마르메당 마르지 마르메당 부마르지 마르메 기프터당 시tam마 시도 주바 따저모데 상지지 이시선저를 소는 곰브런도 시바 치망도 기에도 마반바큰 그 제리 기버리기오모 강 대전 서비 제자득담베 주지 남정도 투네 허비 삼비 무브르시바디 제나디 허비삼빔 산는 더타바 임브르릭브르 샤텐 더타테 nga 셔구지 봉부로 란딕데 상주 생활 조지 영웅소 고라 상주 생활 조짐 던더 대바 양도지 겐든지 왜난득자 출동버름 통화다 니 산지 지정 검은 직든 문지변도 벤지야일레 저바 냠브라네바 흑세르크드 묵망리스 지정 뭐제 전상 남기 남브르 자밤 통화 당 대나 용습샤비 강화 썩바 당나 상집선 화더 네버름 통때 마판반도 라비삼베 무비르비 르기오모 라비삼빔 찬여더 르브르샤고 마판바 대장서바 용습닝은 렌데네 양도베 추지 남정도 토네 멋봉위 땅들 지스 이런와 대덕장 혁비삼바 무비르기 르스 르기워승입샤나 근근점바동 호바타 지르모테 대장서바 라 처바라 토바 연노 마판바 근거 주지 남정도 알라원도 시상 저발라 도버리기오 모델라 님추된다 샤먹고 zelakang 샤먹고 게롱거 겐는 게나 소르만다 요셔다 먹고 대지시르제나 마판바 리기오 디잉이 거동 잉이 거동라 거동금 조밥시바인 거동라 거동금 조밥시바인 rum보체나든 김치르는 방도 정빈지든라 특거 바른 코란 코리기도는 rum전도 득바용서 종화당 제발리 와든당 제비 즈르자 서버름 종화도 시바이노 거동금 줄텐데더라 차당 리 메도당 부당 득부당 청화당 식바당 시마당 구당 어득당 ям선당 리 와든당 넘버제리 와든당 망보도 거꾸도 넘버 망보 시바이노 디여도공을 년장 서버자당 랑아오치 망보당 루무자당 팍독당 팍독당 나바타다 비올로당 카르당 제카다당 루무 넘버 망보 찻메바 가라시아 저주자동 가라시아 저주자동 가라시아 저주자동 호도메바 만복거 시브런게로 마판바 나용섬닝을 렌데나 주지 남정도 종화당 로바당 이겜저와 랍터 돈바디는 이 쉬러 잔동 말보스를 칸 야침보 양밤 통보당 강성섬지장이 요바 게더 저당 게노 동거 남 동거 네건 가라바당 게노 동거니 근가라바당 메도금지브르 시바당 적비나스라당 마르탄담 제바 자와당 제바당 제당 꿈동 제바당 나위소르문지 용수공화당도 대위요샤담 제제랍도 gem바 우브르시베르제도 대망장 호도메바다 야금 동엄 동적 야금 시와금 야금 시와 동 시와 야 동엄 시와 처거트 야동바데도 님든도 냥투지긴 버르데 대덕냥 용수샤베르 샤베르 샤오 마판바 대정서바 용점냥 렌데네 강시 주제 남정던 전담 로담 록감 토 돈담 이겐저금 직장 롱테 남정디는 아용섬냥 렌데나랑 주짐추된 대덕장 샤먹고서 겐단람 슈퍼샤 먹고서 네들겠지 그자라다 마판바근 그 주지 남정던 전장 저바금 서점 삼업조바금 존지 삼 존지 삼상탄 남시르 저바 따지무데 기어리기오 모디 소놈 곰브런도 셰바데 호도메바 정메반 타이바 기바 따지무 마판반더 따데 회나 남기 감나 샤당 로당 나당 샹당 땅당 고고 쇼나 쇼음참을 남세 양은 메바 대전들이 기ව금 리기우 뭐 강소는 원버는도 쉐바 상디디 이시즈 제와 장메바 호도메바 계도 근거 주지 남장던 전담 lok금 돈 담이 그림점 이근저는 지금 대전서 출된 라프터 집이 싫든 원버로 좀바 연노 대전서 반ян투 남기 흥업바마와 연노 마와고 장주선과 선과 전부 남기 용도 쉐와 적주자 동동몽 보용수 조정 잔다라양 다가바르 라프터 돈바 연노 조바주바당 츠점다 담바당 gewi chu jiandang zhugna dewadang zubadang dravadang chaktuk mebadang chua la shebadang jaradang nusin meba yela shebadang jambadang dambam tamba dang sunbadang sunji dang damba yende sanji ji chu jin sura de dorabdir tomba yende sangdang nangda yang dabrun joba lar lemba na nangda yang dabrun jo mangda shebadang zhar rabdan barwa sheba yenme sheba zhwa sheba chakchu jar tongga lan domba yeno mapamba shangju senhua chenpo gang la la ji ge devjang sheba用什么连的那最近南庄等真真不用的呢更也用是就办的大的也喏马盘把日记么刚啦然的的不是下的日记么日记么地像就娘不是样的不是记的像就我们做不是上级不是下雨时的像就中等主要也不是不是下午马盘把日记我个日记么대 강난 장암 득감 착감 대를 마판바 대비전 서베 출된도 쓰고 하던 집엔 직된 기경 대비전 서베 출된의 이노지 대들 줘버셔 대립정된 대지 디체 측습자반데 덕갑살도 맘금냥은 대바나 암도된도는 강점바 손은 bombo만 메바 나이 양다 대능아 람초바지랑 저기는 출된의 영어는 전을 시바나서 바타나 득점제는 방도 창번 지때는 냐명동 듬창 남당 랍더 단나 고란 고리 허르전한데 남기르 와든 남당 단 저르사르베 잠종르테 다르지다듬 지브르시 대전 저르 롱쇼베 야리랑 저르신듬지 부담에도 지바당 고동르모 자르나만당 가이남 르가남장 양당 양대동 저바 게치너시 롤모 잔힌 차르나만당 랑트텔라 동상 스르 부담 점르 마르메르 남 데더라나 근네 퍼 건금도르된 더종와 자피티라 톰바이 디ным 초바남 망보 된잠 타이가라시 흑슬 카마시아당 잔든레는 시바의 컨선섬 자니데 데도망도 야츠고 마르차타가 니에버라 단나 자르남경 자와남경 쪼버라 단나 요랍zambo rapto 샴 네르남 내는 정도 넘버던 메도건동 지버 시 건가닥단 척사 전나 어즈만 넘버 나서기 어당고 망보 대비전 노 남demnyang 데바나 강심도 된든든디 가임던도 겐던 람쇼바 몽보 시바 연나 무바 냥보 강시베 강심도도 흘로바감 이겜저금 시바테 대위소는 망도 더 망갈라리 글로바 마마신등이 지금 저지바 부동 청와 시바 예 올라온 대람쇼바지 부짐 점럽 강와이 마르메르떡드 스 버장 나르마 오팔리스 서마도 나르마 퍼스르마도 잠바키경 랍동 토르 올라온다라 든자빔 조바시베 마티는 소는 망부 람페테 데라 차정 요메도 저터 남기 감기 차도 쪽주더나 담치더 떡더니 버는 열마연 소는 봉보 된자바 조정 뜨르던 냠버 저 저점 장 상탄다 양도 나만 저거 교회를 자는 된다 다무 장치고 초함에 장차함에 주든 데라기 버네 게노남나 떡도 버랑아르메 장레로메 시르단장 디비전 단나 저와 저나 문추르테 냥지 로이 쪽적라 지선 탐버랍더톤 강직 된저 지르네스 돈의 양의 강전바 대입소는 봉보는 차견이 버는 መን교루 돈든 전부 시바이 데스타웨이 추르마와 가르테 맹겜 통나양 텔라신더 거스토샤 라이메도 남기 텔란도르 라이 꾸남기 경 문버가 대일 강월음 고외 시험처럼 대라 대장 시험은 듯이 게더 댐통내는 대체 더냠더 대는 전상 정도는 존재를 때 라던 집인 직된 판비실 라메도 상치는 상르게 냠 라메도 상치 장창 야냠 삼 도르된달라 측지도 지구조장 된짐 개바데 강나 척바감 강난장 군된 득바감 화우 강의 녀를 시봉로 대는 점바 선집 존던기 쳇더 계획 담빔 출된는 따나 득장 나쪽도 시지 대신 때는 출된 나쪽시 강나산 계획데 득바이 사축되는 아이 용서 샤다 녜네 때니 양척 시바 양척 바시 녜네 때니 떠양 척시바 때니 떠는 나양 득버는 일 담비 주바 막가로레 수능 일 남장지 레게지 샤버때 지득바오 야
Now we will continue with our teaching on the Lotus Sutra. This chapter of the Lotus Sutra primarily teaches about the distinction of merits and the lifespan of the Tathagata. In other words, the merits of reciting and copying the Lotus Sutra. It mainly focuses on the aspect of merit. So let us continue. The Buddha told Ajita, Maitreya Bodhisattva, that if anyone hears about the Buddha's lifespan being as immeasurably long as explained before and develops firm faith in this truth, understanding it clearly themselves rather than blindly following others, but truly generating faith in it, then their merit is immeasurable. Moreover, they will attain the supreme wisdom of the Tathagata. So if we generate genuine faith in the Dharma, we have already attained this kind of wisdom of the Tathagata. Let me share a story about the Lotus Sutra with you. This story from the Lotus Sutra is found in the records of verifying experiences with the Lotus Sutra. There was a place in Changsha, which should be present-day Changsha. In this place, 2 exceptionally beautiful lotus flowers grew. At that time, the imperial court felt that because various auspicious signs had appeared there, the court requested to examine the roots of these lotus flowers to discover in what kind of conditions had produced them. So they kept digging, and the roots of these lotus flowers led to a coffin from long, long ago. Inside the coffin was a person's skeleton, a corpse. It had long since decomposed, yet from the tongue, lotus flowers were growing out of the mouth. And there seemed to be writing that said this was a certain monk who had constantly recited the Lotus Sutra. When he died, he had requested that his body not be wrapped in cloth, but in other kinds of paper, and his coffin should not be made of wood, but should be made of pottery shards. There were written records like this. Later, the imperial court found this extremely rare and wonderful, so they built a temple at that place called Wagwan Temple. I don't know if it still exists in the Changsha area now. I haven't looked into this, but I read this account in the records of verifying experiences with the Lotus Sutra. We've mentioned many times before that generally those who recite the Lotus Sutra, even after they leave this human realm, if their remains are buried somewhere, lotus flowers may later grow there. Many auspicious signs appear, such as lotus flowers growing from their graves. Perhaps there is some connection between the Lotus Sutra and its very name. In our world, the lotus flower is extremely pure, unstained, even though it grows in mud. So it represents and symbolizes many meanings. Therefore, we also know that in fact this person had recited the Lotus Sutra 10,000 times in the past. He was a monk. This should inspire faith in the Lotus Sutra within us. Actually, there have been many such stories. It's just that people nowadays don't pay attention to them. If we were to look through the various stories related to the Lotus Sutra, there are truly many of them. Now let's continue with the main text. As mentioned earlier, the Buddha told Maitreya Bodhisattva that if one hears about the lifespan of the Tathagata and develops genuine faith in it, then this merit is immeasurable and limitless. We can say that they will give rise to the supreme wisdom of the Tathagata. Just having faith brings such great merit. How much more so if one extensively hears this sutra by listening to it extensively, and also causes others to listen, listening oneself while also encouraging others to attend classes on the Lotus Sutra, preserving it oneself and causing others to preserve it, copying it oneself and having others copy it as well, and through both one's own efforts and others' efforts, using various offerings, such as flowers, incense, necklaces, banners, canopies, scented oil, ghee, and so forth to make offerings, then this person obtains his immeasurable and limitless merit. Moreover, in the future they will give rise to the omniscience of the Tathagata. This merit is extremely great. With other sutras as well, whether we recite them by ourselves or cause others to recite them, or what we often call the gift of Dharma, teaching the verses, stories, and the principles to others from this sutra, this merit is also extremely great. The Essential Collection of Sutras also says, even if you give all the pleasant things of the three realms to one person, it cannot compare with giving even a single verse. The merit of giving that verse is supreme. It cannot compare with a single verse from a Mahayana sutra like the Lotus Sutra. If you give this to others as the gift of Dharma, then this merit far surpasses giving others all the pleasant things of the three realms. That is not so easy, but explaining the meaning of a single verse to others is actually not that difficult. Some people may think that giving a teaching session or teaching a class to others is not so significant, but this is perhaps because we haven't developed great faith in the law of cause and effect. There are many reasons for this. If we have unwavering faith in the law of cause and effect, then the merit created by ourselves and others should be said to be inconceivable. And it's the same as what is explained here, listening oneself and causing others to listen, copying oneself and causing others to copy, doing these practices oneself and having others do them too. This merit is extremely great. The Sutra of the Irreversible Wheel of Dharma is also a Mahayana sutra. I think I may have quoted from this sutra before. In the Buddha Dharma, the wise person has faith themselves and encourages others to have faith. Teaching in this way, passed on from one to another, the merit multiplies. This merit of teaching passed on from one to another is inconceivable. Many people may be unwilling to share with others, but this is not good. Regarding your own practice of the Dharma, whether it's attending classes, practicing, or reading books on your own, you should share this with the people around you. You should convey this to them. For instance, if you are a parent, you should encourage your children to read the Lotus Sutra more often and to copy it when they have time. If you are a boss, a company manager, or a business leader, then toward your employees, you should not only show kindness through money and material things, but more importantly, show spiritual kindness to them. Whether you are a doctor or someone whose social position may be relatively humble, there are certainly people around you who are of equal status or of lower status than you, as well as people who hold a higher status than you. For those who are above you, you can also make recommendations to them in the form of a respectful request. I read this book and it was really good. Would you like to take a look? Or for others, perhaps buying a sutra for them, offering books on these topics. This is the gift of Dharma. So in our Words of My Perfect Teacher was also explained that when we practice virtue, we can accumulate much merit in our everyday speech and actions. As for creating negative karma, we can also constantly create it in our everyday actions. So practicing virtue doesn't require setting aside a special time. We shouldn't think tomorrow is the time for practicing virtue and the day after is the time for creating negative karma. We should not be like this. We should practice virtue and help others at all times. Making such habit. This is also very good. What's explained here is about encouraging others to listen to the Dharma, to practice it and to copy it. These are all things that many of us can accomplish. We must be able to do this. If we can do it, there is also very great merit. In the records and biographies of the Lotus Sutra, after Kumarajva finished the translation, he requested the king and others to make offerings to this Lotus Sutra. At that time, the king and some other people were not particularly clear about why they should make offerings and why there was so much merit. Later, Kumarajva also explained, even if there are many stories told there. I've read them. There are many stories. Among them is one story. I won't tell all of them due to time constraints. There was one person who in the past committed 3 of the 5 heinous crimes, killing his father, killing his mother, and killing an arhat. But later, although this person did fall into hell, when he arrived in hell, he actually did not experience the blazing torment of hell. It was like taking a hot spring bath for him. He was quite comfortable even in hell. Later, as his body was burning, it emitted an especially fragrant smell. Any hell being who could smell this fragrance was freed from the suffering of hell and attained rebirth in the higher realms. So even someone who committed 3 of the 5 heinous crimes, if they heard the Mahayana teachings, especially the merit of the Lotus Sutra, there are many such stories. So in the future, after we finish studying this Lotus Sutra, I hope that during our lifetime we will often make offerings to this sutra and preserve it ourselves. This is very important. We should also help others form connections with it. Next it says, the Buddha told Ajita, if sons and daughters of virtuous families hear what is explained in this sutra about the Tathagata's immeasurably long lifespan, and deeply develop faith and understanding of this, then this person has already seen the Tathagata constantly at Vulture Peak in India, which can also be called Gudrakuta Mountain or Vulture Peak Mountain, constantly together with a great assembly of bodhisattvas and shravakas surrounding him while the Buddha constantly teaches the Dharma. We mentioned earlier that Great Master Ji's Lotus Assembly, in fact the Lotus Assembly has never dispersed. In the perception of ordinary sentient beings, the Tathagata has already entered Nirvana and the Dharma is about to disappear. This is what people say. But what is constantly explained here is that if one truly has faith that the Tathagata's lifespan is immeasurably long, if one develops unshakable faith in this principle, then one always sees the most supreme scene of the Lotus Assembly. Moreover, one can also see the Saha world. In our perception, this Saha world is impure, unclean, a place with much conflict, where everyone is fighting with each other in various ways, this kind of world. But in fact, such a person has already seen that the Saha world is paved with lapis lazuli, extremely flat without any unevenness, and with pure gold from Jambudvapa forming 8 roadways like lines. We often see in photographs something like golden lines. This is also in the Pure Land. When we teach the Infinite Life Sutra, this will also be mentioned. And jeweled trees arranged in rows, extremely orderly, and pavilions all made of precious treasures, where many bodhisattvas dwell and enjoy. Our ordinary people see this Saha world as very impure, but when the mind is pure, the land is pure. Just as explained in the first chapter of the Vimalakati Sutra, if one can see in this way, then know that this person has attained the mark of deep faith in the Lotus Sutra. That is to say, within deep in their mind, they have truly developed faith and understanding in it. They can see it, just like the story about Brahma we quoted earlier. Originally, this Saha world is very pure. If we develop faith in this principle, then what we see in this world is also pure, not seeing it as especially impure, a defiled age with people heavily afflicted by defilements. It's not like this. It also says that after the Tathagata's parinirvana, if some people hear the Lotus Sutra and they will not slander it, on the other hand, they will develop great joy and appreciation for it. Then in this case, what has this person already attained? The mark of deep faith and understanding. Just as we can say now, many of us who hear this sutra or hear that the Tathagata's lifespan is so immeasurably long, we will not slander it, but we especially rejoice, very happy and delighted. There is still hope. The Tathagata has not yet extinguished. At this time, this shows that we have developed faith in the principle of the Lotus Sutra. How much more so if we personally recite it and preserve it? Then such a person has truly held the Tathagata in reverence, or, as the Tibetan says, carried the Tathagata on their shoulders. The Chinese version says they hold the Tathagata in reverence. If we not only frequently develop faith in this principle, but also recite it and uphold it, propagate it, teach it to others, and even print copies of the Dharma, if this is the case, then such a person is truly endowed with great merit, and the Tathagata constantly blesses them, always staying with them inseparably. So for many of us, if we have great faith in the Lotus Sutra, it's like a liberation knot. When we have faith in it, it means the Tathagata is constantly at the crown of your head, constantly blessing you, constantly thinking of you, and so forth. It is always like this. So we often mention this as well. The records and biographies of the Lotus also explain that the merit is extremely great. If in this life we encounter the Lotus Sutra and often recite it and copy it, then when Maitreya Buddha comes to this world to turn the wheel of Dharma, we will become disciples in his second Dharma assembly, and at that time we will renounce. After renouncing, we will attain nirvana. So as we explained before, under Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching, if one maintains the Pratimoksa vows, when Maitreya Buddha appears in the world, one will also attain liberation. At the latest, one will attain liberation at that time. The records and biographies of the Lotus also say that if now, under the Buddha's teaching, we develop faith in and preserve the Lotus Sutra, at the very latest, when Maitreya Buddha turns the wheel of Dharma, at the second great Dharma assembly, we will be able to attain liberation and be free from the suffering of samsara. The Buddha told Ajita, sons and daughters of virtuous families, if they properly recite the Lotus Sutra, they don't need to build any stupas for me, or make monastic dwellings or assembly halls, or make the 4 kinds of offerings to the Sangha. As for the 4 offerings, we'll discuss them later. They are offerings of clothing, food, medicine, and bedding. If you recite the Lotus Sutra, you don't need to go everywhere soliciting donations to build Buddha images and stupas. When the stupa is only half built and you run out of funds, you then go everywhere soliciting donations. In the process of soliciting donations, you encounter an accident and face all kinds of adverse conditions and obstacles. There's really no need for this. Because if you recite the Lotus Sutra, it is actually the same as building a stupa, and likewise the same as constructing a Dharma hall. If you recite the Lotus Sutra, you don't need to build assembly halls. When building the assembly halls, it has to take for over 5 years long. The first year you build the first floor, the second year build the second floor, the third year build the third floor, and the fourth year build the fourth floor. By the 5th year, you can finally start putting the jeweled finial on top of the assembly hall. This involves extremely hard work and paying a great price. Moreover, during this process, there has many different kinds of gossip, which is not so good either. For a true practitioner reciting the Lotus Sutra every day, you don't need to manage any construction. Many of us go out under the sun to supervise construction work every day, to dealing with construction teams and designers, arguing with these people every day. In the end, your mouth is dry, your face skin is dark, and your heart is uncomfortable. No need for this. Starting tomorrow, all you volunteers can go back and recite the Lotus Sutra. You don't need anything else. I'm joking. This is a provisional teaching. You must rely on the meaning, not on the words alone. Rely on the Dharma, not on the person. I am a person. Below it explains, why is this? The Buddha tells sons and daughters of virtuous families that if they preserve or recite the Lotus Sutra, actually they have already built stupas, already built assembly halls and monastic dwellings, and made offerings to the Sangha. Moreover, these stupas are also reliquary stupas of the Buddha, made of the 7 jewels. Their height and width are extremely beautiful and perfect. These stupas gradually rise higher and higher, reaching all the way to the Brahma heaven, extremely tall, and these stupas are adorned with various banners, canopies, and jeweled bells. There are also flowers, incense, necklaces, powdered incense, burning incense, and ointment incense, and various different musical instruments, including heavenly drums, flutes, pipes, and harps. The harp is like the ancient zither. In the past, it seems to have been quite similar to the ancient zither. In the past, we studied the flute. A teacher taught me in the past, saying these 2 fingers cannot move, all the others can move. One is held vertically like this. The jiao is held this way. And there are various kinds of dances and performances. There are also beautiful voices offering praise and songs of celebration. Making offerings like this for immeasurable thousands of myriads of kotis of kalpas. This means that reciting and preserving the Lotus Sutra is the same as if someone personally built a 7-jeweled stupa for the Buddha's relics, extremely tall and grand, making offerings and praises with various precious treasures, such as musical instruments and beautiful sounds. Making such offerings and doing so for thousands of hundreds of myriads of kalpas, that merit is extremely great. But reciting the Lotus Sutra is exactly the same as this. It means that for such a long period of time, building stupas in this manner, there is no difference whatsoever. So some people, just by reciting the Lotus Sutra, have already built assembly halls and stupas. And these stupas are not ordinary ones. They are not like the small stupas we have now. This takes a very long time. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, in the past, back in the 1980s, in fact, through various means, for instance, the stupa in Daofu, the stupa in Seda, and the stupa in Banma County. When our guru went to those places, he requested that the offerings people made to him be used for the construction of these stupas. The one in Banma County, Qinghai, was the same. In Seda, there was also a great stupa in the past. Later, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also took part in it. We also have some construction projects like this now. Those who built it at the beginning, later it became credited to others. This kind of phenomenon happened as well. But in any case, at that time, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also made the aspiration to build for 20,000 or so stupas. He specifically made the interior consecrations, building stupas in various places. When I first came to the Larungar, it seemed that throughout the entire Tibetan region, there were very few stupas. There were almost none of any stupas. But later, when this movement was initiated, at that time we can say it was through our guru's efforts, though of course there were other great masters and movements in other places as well. Later on, white stupas started popping up all over Tibetan area until they were everywhere. Now it feels like in the Tibetan areas, no matter where you go for even just a short drive, you're bound to see one. But it's not like in Myanmar, Thailand, and Cambodia. There are even more stupas in those places. I think this way. In our age of the decadent Dharma, it's truly the case that to seeing these stupas, sutras, and seeing these Buddhist monastics, we indeed have great merit. Because there are many reasons for this. If we were to explain them here, there would be a lot of reasons to explain. So we should still feel joyful. When Buddhism is not in this world at all, when it has disappeared from this world, sentient beings are extremely pitiful. We even cannot to planted a seed or imprint of the 3 jewels in our mind streams. But now, as long as we are not too inferior from external circumstances, there are many such favorable conditions. Of course, regarding the merit, we all know that the merit of the Mahayana Sutras is such great. The Buddha also told Ajita, saying, after my parinirvana, if anyone hears the Lotus Sutra and someone preserves it and copies it by themselves or causes others to copy it, then this person has already established assembly halls and monastic dwellings, and moreover has built them using red sandalwood. They have built 32 Buddha halls and palace halls, and their height is 8 tala trees. In Tibetan version, it says 8 stories. The number of assembly halls is 32. The height is 8 stories. Perhaps 1 tala tree equals 1 story. This is how it's explained in Tibetan. They're also huge and wide, really magnificent structures. Inside this hall, hundreds upon hundreds of monks can stay together. Plus, all around the area, there are what we'd call auxiliary facilities, things like gardens and ponds surrounding the assembly halls, even dedicated spots for meditation, and also offerings of clothing, food, bedding, and medicine for these monastics. These are the 4 offerings mentioned earlier. For making offerings to the Sangha, generally it's clothing, food, bedding, and medicine, and all kinds of pleasant necessities, all joyful requisites, all completely filling this place. If we recite the Lotus Sutra by ourselves, We are actually building assembly halls for so many monastics now. Many wealthy people also build stupas and assembly halls and make offerings to the Sangha in different places. Of course, this merit is extremely great. But if the conditions in this regard are not sufficient, if you recite the Lotus Sutra, this merit is also the same. That's what it means. We see now that there seem to be quite a lot of people building stupas, but it seems that with some new policies from the government now, the outdoor Buddha images are generally not easy to get approved. The same goes for stupas. In the beginning, it may have been easier to build stupas regardless of the location. In some other places, stupas may also be relatively easy to build. And when building stupas, you must get the right dimensions of the stupa. If you're according to the Chinese Buddhist or Theravada Buddhist stupa style to build, it also has its measurements. You must properly measure all the dimensions and heights. Everything must be done according to the rules. If following Tibetan Buddhism, it's also the same. Building Buddha images and stupas are all the same. Building monasteries are the same as well. Now, many people who have some capability to build Buddha halls by their own resources, and although some don't have the conditions to build a large monastery, but they still build some temporary Buddha halls for communal practice in various places. Actually, this is exactly the same. What purpose do Buddha halls serve? Mainly for study and practice. If in our lay Buddhist communities, no matter someone who provides a space individually or everyone rents a place together for study and practice throughout the year, this merit is truly very great. I often think that if someone who seemed to have an empty house here or an empty house there, for instance, an empty house in Hong Kong, an empty house in Shenzhen, an empty house in Shanghai, an empty house in Canada, and an empty house in Australia, then one person stays here today and there tomorrow. This may not be very necessary. It would be better if some of these empty houses could be used by local Buddhists for communal practice. Even if they use them for communal practice for just 1 month, I think your house would be very meaningful. Here it mainly teaches about the merit of the Lotus Sutra, but we can also say this at the same time. If you have the conditions, try your best to support the Sangha. Everything is still quite good now. When we go to the Han regions, including some fortunate people who set up very fine Buddha halls in their companies, in their own Buddha halls, they place many extremely magnificent Buddha images, and the offerings and manner of making offerings are also quite proper. Back in the 1990s, when we went to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and also to other places, including America, when we visited many Buddhist centers, we were very envious at that time. At that time in mainland China, there were indeed relatively few offerings, but now it's completely different from before, so we also rejoice greatly. Even if you don't have the conditions for study and practice, you can still set aside a room in your own home to make a Buddha hall. This is also very good. If you don't have this condition either, then in your own bedroom or in a particular area, you can also place some Buddha images, separate the space a bit in the middle. This is also very good. Everyone must recognize this merit. The assembly halls and pavilions built in this way, thousands, hundreds of myriads of kotis, immeasurable in number, are all offered before our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha and the bhiksus. That merit is extremely great. Moreover, they can fully enjoy them. In Tibetan it says, not only making offerings to the Buddha and Sangha, but also for their enjoyment. That merit is very great. But actually, if we recite the Lotus Sutra, we completely attain such merit. So the Buddha says, after the Tathagata's parinirvana, if anyone recites and preserves the Lotus Sutra and also proclaims it to others, or copies it by themselves, or causes others to copy it, and makes offerings to such sutra scrolls, there is no need to build any other stupas or monasteries, including assembly halls, or make offerings. How much more so for those who, while reciting and upholding the Lotus Sutra, also practice giving, ethics, patience, and diligence, as well as meditation and wisdom. Their merit is even more truly immeasurable and boundless. Preserving the Lotus Sutra at the same time as cultivating the 6 perfections, together with the 6 perfections, reciting or copying the Lotus Sutra, this merit is even more inconceivable. An analogy is given as following. What is this merit like? It's like space, east, south, west, north, the 4 intermediate directions, above and below, the 10 directions. Space in the 10 directions is without limit. In the same way, if we practice the Lotus Sutra, embraced by the 6 perfections, the merit of cultivating the Lotus Sutra cannot even be compared to space. This kind of merit enables one to attain Buddhahood very quickly. If some people recite and preserve the Lotus Sutra and also proclaim it to others, copy it by themselves and cause others to copy it, actually this person has already built stupas and Buddha halls and also made offerings to and praised the Shravaka Sangha and praised the Bodhisattva Sangha with thousands of hundreds of myriads of praises. That is to say, they have already obtained the merit of building assembly halls and stupas, but also of making various offerings and offering praises to the Shravaka Sangha and praising the Bodhisattva Sangha. Moreover, this person, through various illustrations, causes, and so forth, proclaims the Lotus Sutra, because if they recite it, in fact, this person has already taken the Lotus Sutra and directly proclaimed it to sentient beings through various methods. They can completely obtain this merit. At the same time, when expound the Lotus Sutra together with the 6 perfections, what was just mentioned should be the extensive explanation of the perfection of giving through the gift of Dharma. At the same time, purifying ethical conduct, the perfection of ethical conduct, and then dwelling together with gentle, mild people without any mind of anger and with extremely firm resolve. This can be said to be the perfection of patience. Then, for a long time sitting in a meditation environment and constantly cultivating profound samadhi, this is the perfection of meditation. Constantly and diligently and courageously holding to wholesome dharmas. This is what we mentioned before, the perfection of diligence. Diligence and meditation might be switched around. Then using your sharp wisdom to answer any questions others might have. If you can answer every single one of them, that is the perfection of wisdom. These 6 perfections are incredibly important as well. If the 6 perfections and the practice of the Lotus Sutra are doing all together, then this merit is extremely great. The Buddha told Ajita, after my parinirvana, if sons and daughters of virtuous families preserve this sutra or recite this sutra, then what are the merit and good roots like? In fact, this person has already entered the terrace of enlightenment, has already approached highest, complete enlightenment. They have already sat under the Bodhi tree. If we truly recite and practice the Lotus Sutra, this person is not far from Buddhahood. Just like when we teach the Prajna teachings, then the Buddha told Ajita, whether sons and daughters of virtuous families are sitting, standing, or walking, in such places a stupa should actually be builded. Earlier we said that there's no need to build stupas or monasteries, that as long as you recite the Lotus Sutra. But then it says right here that if someone teaches the Lotus Sutra, reads it, or recites it from memory, no matter where they sit or stand, no matter where they are, we should build a stupa there to honor them. This serves as a place of offering for humans and devas, exactly the same as the Buddha's stupa. Here, we can also explain it this way. For instance, if there is a place where the Lotus Sutra is taught, it could be called the Lotus Teaching Hall. In the future, this could be done there. For example, if a person focuses on propagating the Lotus Sutra, then in the future, where this person lived, the house where the person lived, where this person usually rested, all can build a stupa. Then this stupa can form connections with innumerable sentient beings. Its name can also be Lotus Stupa. This is all possible. In the past, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught the treasury of precious meaning in our great assembly hall, that treasury of precious meaning is called the treasury of luminosity. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok used to call the small room where he taught the Palace of Luminosity. Back in the early days, inside our main assembly hall, there was a tiny room at the very top. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok had already taught the treasury of precious meaning there, and this was probably back in the 90s. Later, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok in his residence should be on the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor there was a small glass room. Inside he taught the Dharmadhatu treasury at that time. Later, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok used to call that small glass room as the Dharmadhatu Palace. So in the future, when we propagate the Dharma and benefit beings, we can also do the same thing. For instance, if some Dharma teachers among you who can teach the Lotus Sutra in a certain place, then we can build a Lotus Stupa at that place. On the surface, it looks like an enlightenment stupa. This is also possible. When I first ordained in the past, Khenpo Deba taught us the words of my prefect teacher. Later, I really wanted to commemorate that place because the places where some great masters taught are not only revered by our humans, but even ghosts and non-humans constantly honor, respect, and prostrate to them. It also explains here that those who teach the Lotus Sutra, whether male or female, wherever they sit or stand, wherever they walk or lie down, these are the places of the 4 postures in Tibetan version, and are all should be worthy of offerings. The meaning below is quite similar. I'll just briefly explain the literal meaning. Below, the Bhagavat, wanting to restate this meaning, spoke verses. After my parinirvana, if anyone honors this sutra, the merit is immeasurable and limitless that this person obtains, just as we explained before. That is to say, they have already perfected all offerings, because if they recite the Lotus Sutra, then all kinds of offerings that to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are exactly the same. Moreover, with this relic stupa made of the 7 jewels, extremely magnificent, its parasol pole, the parasol pole being its external form, or the banner pole. The whole base of the stupa below is especially magnificent, tall and wide. Then this stupa gradually gets smaller and smaller as it goes up, finally reaching the position of the Brahma heaven. And on this stupa there are thousands of myriads of kotis of jeweled bells. When moved by the wind, they emit especially pleasant and beautiful sounds, making offerings to such stupas for immeasurable kalpas. And with flowers, necklaces, heavenly garments, and various musical instruments, as well as scented oil, ghee, and various lamp offerings, after making offerings illuminating the entire world. Now at our Larungar, the stupa of the mandala, the assembly hall, when those lights are on, and also at night time, the surroundings are very magnificent and spectacular. Just like that. The meaning is, actually, in the very beginning, it should also be various kinds of lamps, various kinds of bright lamps. After being adorned, the surroundings are extremely bright and spectacular. Then in that case, so in the age of the decadent Dharma, if one can recite this sutra, then all the merits mentioned above of making offerings to stupas are all perfected. If one can preserve and recite this sutra, it's actually just like the place where the Buddha was present, where there is something called oxhead sandalwood, used to build a monastic dwelling, making offerings exactly the same. Generally in India, there are several different kinds of special sandalwood. There is an oxhead sandalwood among them, snakehead sandalwood, and many others. What is built by this, for instance, red sandalwood, offerings made with red sandalwood, and moreover, where the Buddha is present, not someone else making offerings to such an assembly hall, there is no difference. Moreover, this assembly hall has 32 rooms, 8 tala trees tall. The number of stories is like this. There are all kinds of delicious treats hanging from the trees, along with beautiful fine clothing and even bedding and cushions, everything you could need. Inside you'll find many Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the community of Shravakas. Then there are gardens and ponds around them. This is exactly how it's described in the Buddhist sutras. This is about environmental studies. Now, many consider that the Buddha's planning, for instance, our current planning and some landscaping, the most beautiful, including today's parks, actually in Buddhism, the earliest were assembly halls and main buildings, then the auxiliary, the whole surrounding area, including some ponds, planting various trees, the arrangement of longitudinal and transverse roads, and around the periphery, including flowers and various railings. All of these, actually in the Buddhist sutras, should be said that our current highest quality, finest, these magnificent, beautifully surrounding environments are all in the Buddhist sutras. So sometimes when we look at the Buddhist sutras, the design and planning of areas that people now consider high class, whether design or planning, are explained quite extensively in the Buddhist sutras. Wow. Don't play with the dog, otherwise it's very dangerous. Some are rather foolish, and as just mentioned, places for meditation, these are all extremely magnificent. If anyone has faith and preserves this sutra, recites this sutra, and some people cause others to copy it, making such offerings. The offering substances also include various flowers, incense, powdered incense, and sumanas flowers. There are several flowers, explains here. One is the sumanas flower, one is the kampaka flower. The kampaka flower is yellow. And there is one called atimukta, which is also a heavenly flower, 3 different flowers. Some sutras explain that they are quite similar to blue lotus flowers, also yellow and white, these 3 kinds of flowers. And constantly burning scented oil actually means that fragrant oil with a very good fragrance and made into lamps. In Tibetan version, it explains that making offerings with these 3 flowers, offerings of these flowers to the sutra books. You can look up these several different flowers when you have time. You should be able to find them. And also lamps of fragrant oil that have been lit, making offerings with these. Making such offerings gains immeasurable and limitless merit, just as space without limit, so their merit is without limit too. Think about how much more powerful it is if, while making offerings and reciting the sutra, you also practice generosity, ethics, patience, meditation, and diligence. Take patience, for example. It means not getting angry and avoiding harsh or abusive language. As Buddhists, these are the things we really need to pay attention to. Otherwise, our Buddhists, not to mention worldly people, in some places there is a difference. Nowadays, some people who lack a bit of self-cultivation, every time they open their mouths, they're cursing. Even in everyday conversation, they say a lot of nasty things. We really need to keep all of that in check. Instead, we should honor the monasteries, the stupas, and the temples, and we should be humble and respectful toward all monastics and the Sangha. We truly need to show them respect. Then distance yourself from pride and arrogance in your heart and constantly contemplate, giving rise to non-dual wisdom. And when people ask questions, do your best to answer them with your wisdom without generating anger. Actually, when others ask questions, if you sincerely answer them, this is the best opportunity to turn the wheel of Dharma. In many sutras, when teaching about the perfection of wisdom, when others ask questions, you can answer, because others truly have such doubts and confusion. At this time, if you use your sword of wisdom to cut through it, this is extremely important. And for an individual, perhaps turning the wheel of Dharma for the masses is not as good as once this problem for this individual is resolved. From then on, they can completely step onto the right path. It's very meaningful. So we cannot generate anger. In the past, some of our great masters and teachers answered every question with great patience. And those people also took it very seriously. After the answer was given, they immediately wrote it down, not like us. After asking the question, they completely ignored. Sometimes, for instance, a person asks me a question and I give them an answer very seriously, but as I'm speaking, they fall asleep. When the person asking the question doesn't take it seriously, that's the most disappointing, because if other people don't take it seriously, we can understand that, but the person asking the question should have a responsibility. Whether my answer satisfies them or not, they should listen very carefully. But some people, I don't know if someone else made them ask the question or if their own mind wandered. We still pay quite close attention. For instance, in a certain place, when they raise a question, we try our best to satisfy them. Then while answering, watching their expression, it seems they don't take it seriously. So this is also not good. Generally, when a question is raised, their doubt may represent many people, because many people's doubts are quite similar. For instance, if it's a doubt from someone born in the 1980s, perhaps many people born in the 1980s have same doubt. If they're born in the 1990s, perhaps many born in the 1990s have same issues. Or if they are a relatively elderly person, perhaps many elderly people have same question. So generally speaking, whether teaching a class or giving a talk, leaving some time for questions in the middle is also very good. Among the Khenpos and Khenmos that are Larungar, some people are very interested in this aspect and leave time for everyone. Some say, I only want to give a talk, I don't want to answer questions. That's also okay. We can't possibly force you. You must answer, otherwise we'll make it hard for you. That's also not good. Going with conditions is also acceptable, but generally speaking, especially for Dharma teachers, because answering questions does have a certain challenge. When teaching a lesson, you have the authority to decide what you want to teach, but with questions, you don't know what questions they'll ask, and we can't possibly prepare in advance, because others ask questions that's impossible we will know in advance. Some people may genuinely ask questions, while some people may have various motives, even perhaps after receiving the Dharma teaching announcement. Some people were already thinking of deliberately making things difficult 6 months ago. There are such cases. We must see at that time, and to give them a bit of difficulty, make them look bad. If they can't answer this one point, how wonderful. Some people don't genuinely have this doubt, but through various research, then they ask the question. There are such cases too. So you see, it explains here that when there are questions, don't generate anger, but patiently explain for them according to their capacities. If one can practice in this way, then this merit is inconceivable, because the 6 perfections have all been embraced. If one sees such a Dharma teacher who constantly recites and preserves the Lotus Sutra, and also constantly embraces it with the 6 perfections, such a Dharma teacher, they will accomplish such merit. We should make offerings to them with flowers from the heavens. Heavenly garments can also cover their bodies. In the Tibetan regions, for instance, when a singer is singing, many people offer them katas. In the end, they become a huge pile of katas, and you can't even see what this person is singing. So if a Dharma teacher propagates the Lotus Sutra in this way, constantly make offerings to them by using all heavenly and human garments. In the end, you can't even see them because it is completely covered. Moreover, prostrate respectfully at their feet and regard them as the Buddha in your mind. You see here the idea of viewing the teacher as the Buddha is not only a tantric teaching. In our tantra, it's taught to take refuge in the Guru, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. At this time, some people say, how come in Tibetan Buddhism should take refuge in the Guru? You shouldn't take refuge. And moreover, viewing the teacher as the Buddha, in Tantra, it's taught that the Guru should be treated like the Buddha. Some people from the exoteric schools don't really understand this kind of statement, but this should be understood. Why? You see, people who teach the Lotus Sutra, that is to say, those who recite it, preserve it, and propagate it, and embrace it with the 6 perfections, we should use heavenly garments to completely make offerings to them. This is also worthy, and prostrate before them and regard them as truly being the Buddha. This is reasonable, and we should also think about them this way. What do we need to think? This person who propagates the Lotus Sutra, they will go to the Bodhi tree in short time, and to attain the uncorrupted and unconditioned wisdom, and spontaneously and effortlessly extensively benefit all the assemblies of humans and devas. We should show deep respect to any great master who spreads the Lotus Sutra, offering them our praise and support rather than speaking ill of them. Otherwise, if we hold on to a negative mind, we'll have to face the karmic consequences ourselves, which only leads to a lot of suffering. So, no matter where we are, whenever we meet teachers who propagate the Lotus Sutra, we should treat them just as we would the Buddha. Moreover, wherever they live, wherever they walk, or wherever they lie down to sleep, even where they speak a single verse from the Lotus Sutra, and should be built the stupa in these places, because this is a commemoration. Actually, this is very necessary. Right now, at Larunga, we just don't have the space. Take those stupas at the entrance below, for example. The spots where we originally built them, because the Larunga's grounds are so limited, there's just no way around it. But if you find yourselves in different places in the future, let's say at a certain monastery, and you teach the Lotus Sutra there, then in some part of that monastery, it's really important to build a lotus stupa. This is what the Buddhist sutras explain like this. Even teaching a single verse, though a single verse might be a bit difficult, but actually if this Dharma was taught, there should be some commemorative stupas made here. This is very necessary. Some great masters also did this in the past. For instance, in a certain place, in the past, one of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok's gurus was known as the Chen Rezig Lama, the Mani Lama. He used to travel around chanting the Mani mantra and teaching people everywhere. Later on, in many parts of the Tibetan regions, stupas were built on the very spots where he had taught. Even down in our Purple Blue Mountains Valley, near the place where His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok originally lived, there's a stupa right by the side of the road. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok mentioned that when he was very young, he attended a teaching there given by the玛尼喇嘛. So at that place there should be a commemorative stupa. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok specifically erected it when he was alive. Of course, for some great masters, including the place where they were born, where they passed into nirvana, and where they turned the wheel of Dharma, all these can be, especially for the Lotus Sutra, this is also possible. Of course, we won't be doing that here in our area. Otherwise, you'll all just start up again. You all seem to have a real talent for fundraising. You're always like, oh, we need to build this or that right here. But doing it that way doesn't create a good impression, and there's no clear plan anyway. If there were a clear, definite reason, like to commemorate someone special, then it would be okay. But now there's nothing definite. So in the future, if there are some Dharma teachers among us at some other monasteries who can truly propagate the Lotus Sutra once, it's worth commemorating. At our Larungar, because many teachings are transmitted, commemorating them one by one is impossible and also unnecessary. But in the future, everyone should also be able to know this importance. This stupa should be extremely magnificent, making offerings with all kinds of offerings. And where such heirs of the Buddha dwell, actually the Buddha is blessing and the Buddha is also enjoying. For instance, in a certain place, if an heir of the Buddha teaches the Lotus Sutra, no matter where they live, where they rest, all these places of walking, standing, sitting, and lying, the Buddha is also enjoying blessing and constantly stay there. Where they live, where they walk, in these places, the Buddha is also constantly there. The meaning is that the Buddha's form body is also existed, and walking, standing, sitting, and lying all being carried out. This is also why we build stupas. Therefore, this chapter mainly teaches about the many merits of the Lotus Sutra. In the past, the penetrating meaning of the lotus said that the most essential essence of the Lotus Sutra is in this chapter, and all the merits of the Lotus Sutra, if this chapter is taught, they are also obtained. So I also hope that we will develop firm understanding regarding the Tathagata's immeasurable lifespan. At the same time, in the days to come, let's see if we can, in our own Buddha halls, for instance, if we plan to recite the Lotus Sutra, one is for regular reading, just like with our mandala offerings. There's the practice mandala and the offering mandala. One copy of the Lotus Sutra placed in the Buddha hall for constant offerings, it seems. In another text about the Lotus Sutra, it said there was a person who copied it and constantly recited it, but didn't make offerings. Later, after they died, when they reached the king of the intermediate state, they were told, although you copied and recited it, this merit is very great, but you still need to return to the human realm to make offerings, because the merit of making offerings is even greater. Later, after this person returned to the human realm, he made offerings to the Lotus Sutra continuously, so we should place it in the Buddha hall and make offerings with flowers and incense constantly. This is also very important for us as Buddhists. I also hope that many of us should develop in great faith in the Lotus Sutra this time, including myself. I also read it once before, but it seems my impression wasn't deep. This time, as we study a section each day, we still have some understanding of each principle. So I'm also very joyful indeed studying the Lotus Sutra this time. Personally speaking, the harvest has been very great. I believe for many of us, except for a very few sentient beings who have severed their roots of virtue, most people should have extremely great faith in this Mahayana Dharma. After having faith in our actual practice, we should also recite and make offerings constantly. We should constantly serve it in various ways toward Lotus Sutra. This point is very important. More importantly, there are still many people around each of you. Some of them have faith, some are not. It's up to you to guide these people step by step and help them transform through your own experiences and your own. Just now I actually overheard someone on the phone in the hallway. You must recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra. You must recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra. It seems their power of persuasion was quite strong. They were extremely enthusiastic. You must recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? So sometimes toward our relatives and friends, we need to see what kind of methods to use. There's a combination of soft and hard approaches. What methods should be used to guide them? Some people may be quite good at speaking, have strong capabilities, and have many methods, and their hearts are also very kind. In this way, through various methods, also tell others, take a look at the Lotus Sutra. You don't know now, but you will know in the future. If you read it once, I'll give you a very nice chocolate, and so on. Use various methods to gradually get them to practice. So this chapter is now complete. That's all for today.
Bandangara Badna Sadarda Bandangara Badna Sada Bandangara Badna Sadarda